Well, good morning, everyone. This is Mike O'Malley here at the Hurricane Outlook discussion for June 2nd, 2020, recorded around 10:18 a.m. Eastern Time. This is the second day of the Atlantic hurricane season, and we do have stuff to talk about already. Go think about that. So, down here in the Atlantic Basin, here in the southern Gulf of Mexico and Bay of Campeche, water temperatures here are running about near normal to just slightly above the long-term average right now, with about, in some cases there in the southern Bay of Campeche, reaching almost 2 degrees Celsius above the long-term average. Again, we have a developing La Nina out here. We'll talk about that more in an update later this afternoon. But again, our main focus right now is on Tropical Depression 3, soon to be Tropical Storm Cristobal, here in the southern Bay of Campeche, where water temperatures, again, 28 to 29 Celsius around this area, and where this thing might be heading is in a very general favorable direction in terms of the water temperatures. Now, there's a lot of discrepancy in the models about where this thing might go. We'll talk about that here in just a little bit. But again, water temperatures in this area right now, where Tropical Depression 3 are running about 28 to 29 Celsius. The upper ocean heat content, which measures the warmer water at depth. Once you start getting into these greens, yellows, and oranges, that's the higher water at the higher upper ocean heat content, more latent heat release, more fuel for the hurricanes per se. Again, where Tropical Depression 3 is right now, situated right in through about here, and this is going to continue to meander around the southern part of the Bay of Campeche and the southern Gulf of Mexico and portions of the southeastern Gulf over the next several days or so. This is not expected to be a fast-moving system that's rapidly moving north or whatever. This is going to be meandering around over the next several days or so. And if we take a look here at Tropical Depression 3, again, we do have tropical storm warnings that have been issued for portions of Mexico here in the Yucatan Peninsula on the western portions there. Very heavy rainfall is expected for portions of the Yucatan Peninsula, especially off to the east of this system. This is still fairly heavily weighted off towards the east at this point, but again, more convection has been developing around the center. This is likely now a tropical storm and recon. The hurricane hunters, the reconnaissance plane from Biloxi, Mississippi, they are actually now heading out, and they will be heading down here into Tropical Depression 3, likely now Tropical Storm Cristobal. This is expected to meander around and get very close to the Mexican coastline here over the next several days, and it may or may not make landfall here in the Mexican area. Again, this is a very complicated forecast because we do have a ridging. We have a ton of things steering this thing. First of all, this larger overall gyre that Tropical Depression 3 is embedded in is trying to force this system down towards the southwest here. We also have a ridge of high pressure developing here as an area of low pressure is moving off towards the northeast, leaving a ridge back in its place that's also trying to steer this system down towards the south. So a lot of competing flow here over the next several days or so, and that's going to be one of the main problems. Now, this is expected to intensify, not rapidly, but it is expected to intensify into a tropical storm if it's not already by later this afternoon, if it's not already right now. This is expected now to reach strong tropical storm strength as it moves up here into the Gulf later this week. But there's a lot of caveats to that because this forecast point right here may not actually be Tropical Depression 3. It could be a new system, and we'll talk about that here in just a little bit. Now, taking a look here at the 850 millibar vorticity, the spin in the atmosphere about 5,000 feet off the ground. Again, towards the reds and whites here, you're actually getting the higher cyclonic spin at 5,000 feet. Again, this is our tropical depression right now, Tropical Depression 3. Again, this is an area that formed way down here with this larger overall gyre, and this became Tropical Storm Amanda. Not the same exact circulation, but a circulation did form that became Amanda. Its remnants came up here across portions of the Yucatan Peninsula, and then eventually out here now to the southern Bay of Campeche. And if we take a look here at the vertical wind shear, we've seen a very rapid decrease in the vertical wind shear as a large anticyclone is somewhat displaced over the system, but it is there nonetheless, reducing the shear in the bucket that allows for less stress for these thunderstorms and a more concentrated environment for these storms to concentrate around the center. That's going to allow this to become Tropical Storm Cristobal here in the next while if it's not already there. And if we take a look here on the visible satellite from COD Meteorology, again, this is what we're talking about. You've got this really nice banding effect that's going on here. Our center is located somewhere roughly in there. And we're starting to get a lot more of this banding that's going on. Now, you do notice there is still some drier air kind of indicated by these milky white cirrus clouds, basically, that's out here and some of the outflow. But we generally have a large anticyclone that's over the system that's helping to amplify the potential for thunderstorms to concentrate around the center. Now, if you remember yesterday, when Tropical Depression 3 first formed, there was virtually no thunderstorms near the center. That has rapidly improved throughout the overnight hours and through tonight. Now, there's still very heavy rainfall concentrated on the east side of this. And if we take a look here at the actual radar from the Mexican site, the Mexican Weather Service here, again, we'll wait for this to start playing. Again, you do notice that that is a very heavy amount of rainfall that's on the east side. And we'll jump to the latest frame. There we go. So here's the latest frame. Again, you notice all of this convection still heavily weighted off towards the eastern side. But notice what you're starting to get over here. You're starting to get a lot more deeper convection near the center, which again is roughly probably somewhere in there. Getting all of this deep convection to focus and concentrate closer to the center. That's been indicated by several convective bursts over the last several hours. Again, we've continued to see time and time again these hot towers developing, rotating around, and that's very clearly indicated by the actual animation itself that we have seen a fairly substantial convective burst that has occurred near the center that's developed more thunderstorms, and all of this convection is still rotating around itself. So again, you know, this is a low pressure system, and let's draw that low pressure a little bit better there. There we go. So as a low pressure develops, again, you're getting that counterclockwise turning, and again, that's continuing to rotate these showers and thunderstorms that are off the coast here closer and closer to the center. Well, in the same token, more thunderstorms are developing because of the mountainous terrain that's down here, the orographic lift that's causing additional thunderstorm development just downslope of that, and that is causing additional convection to be heavily weighted on the east side, dumping an extremely heavy amount of rainfall. Rainfall amounts there could be already getting close to about 20 inches, and I would not be surprised here if we get some about 25 inches of rain, extreme flash flooding in this area. And you can just tell, I mean, this has just been sitting over the same area really since last night, and that's one of the main problems right now, is extremely concerning for flash flooding. Not so much the wind potential. Again, if this thing can concentrate, yes, this thing could certainly become a strong tropical storm in the southern Bay of Campeche, as indicated by some of the hurricane models. But again, that's not necessarily a guarantee. Now, again, taking a look here at the actual tracks for Tropical Depression 3, let's just see if it's been updated right now for the 12Z. It has not. So 6Z forecast, again, most of the modeling has it hanging around here for the next 48 to 72 hours. And again, the main caveat is this persistent ridging that's occurring out here with this low pressure system that's moving out across here, and also this larger gyre, which is embedded in that is Tropical Depression 3. These two steering features are trying to push the storm back off to the south and west. Now, there's been one major problem. If we look here at the GFS forecast, you do notice that if we just move it back a couple of models or a couple of runs here, the forecast model out for the next 18 hours or so has been shifting a lot further off towards the east. And one of the major things here is, if you jump back to the radar, the system really hasn't moved much. In fact, it may have moved a tad west-northwest within the last couple of hours this morning, that there could be some potential caveats to exactly how close to the coast it gets. Again, this is likely to meander around over the next several days or so. The GFS is finally coming around within the next 18 hours to a stronger cyclone in this region, and the European as well. The Euro model has a pretty strong cyclone there within the next 48 to 72 and 96 hours, while it kind of generally meanders around the Yucatan Peninsula or the Mexican coastline. Again, how close to the coast does this get is a real caveat here. Now, the GFS forecast here does actually have this making landfall in the same general vicinity that it is right now. The system does not really move much and the system actually does make landfall here in Mexico. Now, there's caveats to this. The European model, for example, moves us here into the Gulf of Mexico within 120 hours over the next 5 days as a hurricane. The GFS forecast model has this as a strong tropical storm making landfall in Mexico. Again, one of the main primary factors is this ridging that's out here. There's also some ridging out across here, and there's also this larger gyre that's kind of set up through here. And these two steering features with this ridging and gyre are trying to basically move this system down towards the south and west. But right now, it is not seeming to follow some of the model guidances. Again, the weather, everything in weather is a fluid. It's not 100% until it's happening in real time. So again, how close to the coastline does this get is a real problem because, again, if we just jump back to the forecast here, if this does not make landfall, there is a very strong likelihood that this could become a hurricane somewhere here in the Gulf of Mexico, as indicated by the European model and the European ensemble forecast, and even some of the, the HWRF model and stuff like that. If this makes a landfall in Mexico, then this system is likely to die off while we might get another tropical system from this larger gyre that moves northward over the next several days. Is what's going to happen as this low pressure moves off towards the north here, that's going to eventually want to bring this gyre northward. And if we look here and take a look at the GFS forecast out for the next 100 hours, if that will load, there we go. We'll go to the 90-hour forecast. This low starts to move off towards the north, and that's going to drag whatever's down here with it. Now, whether it's a tropical cyclone or whether it's just a large Central American gyre is really the caveat, because that's going to determine what impacts, if any, is going to occur for portions of the Gulf Coast. Now, there's likely to be some very heavy rainfall for somewhere along the Gulf Coast this weekend into next week. Where exactly that is the very big factor that we don't know. So the best thing right now, if you live anywhere from Texas all the way to Florida, it is hurricane season. It is the time to be prepared. We're in the second day of hurricane season. It's time to be prepared. So whatever happens now, again, you always want to watch to the forecast. Stay tuned to local media, Weather Service, National Hurricane Center, and for the latest information and updates. And again, of course, we will always be here with the latest updates as well. Again, the general bottom line is this is likely to become Tropical Storm Cristobal within a few short hours. This could affect portions of Mexico with tropical storm, even potentially hurricane force gusts here. Again, this is expected to eventually turn away currently from the Mexican coastline and make its way up here into the Gulf of Mexico and eventually bring some rainfall for somewhere along the Gulf Coast. But again, where exactly this happens along the Gulf Coast remains to be seen. There's a lot of caveats right now. Again, we don't know. The bottom line is if you live in Mexico, you need to be taking preparations now. Tropical Storm Cristobal is getting ready to develop, if not hasn't already. If you live along the Gulf Coast from Texas to Florida, you want to be prepared. It is hurricane season. Make sure you stay aware for the latest information. Again, we will have latest forecast updates here coming out later this afternoon. Hope you all have a great rest of your morning, and I will see you guys later this morning.